Well, hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Go the Distance podcast, where we have real, raw conversation about real, raw life issues. We've had some great podcasts over the past few weeks, and I'm super excited to come to you again this week with my daughter, Haley Wilkerson. It's good to have you back in the studio.
I know, long time no see.
Yeah, we had no idea we were going to do two parts, did we?
No, not at all.
But you ended up being able to stay a few extra days.
Yeah, that was really unexpected, but very much appreciated. So,
and you're getting ready in a few days to head back to Jackson, Tennessee.
Yes.
And so we took the opportunity to have another podcast shoot with her, dad and daughter, just having conversation, both in ministry, both serving the kingdom of God and the church of God. And so we just have so much in common. We just enjoy talking to each other.
I just enjoy talking in general because if I'm at home all the time during quarantine, I'm like talking to the wall. So it's just nice to talk.
That's true. Just so you guys know, she's been home since Tuesday,
Monday
night of Thanksgiving week. Yeah. She came home. And of course, we're shooting this. It's the week after Thanksgiving. This doesn't air until, so this is December the 1st that we're shooting. This will air December the 9th. But just so you guys know, since she's been home, I have not been able to watch TV on my TV.
I'm very sorry about that.
Because it has been Hallmark Channel from the time you walk through the door.
And I told you last night that it's a tradition that when I'm home during the holiday season, Mom and I watch Hallmark movies because I don't watch them by myself when I'm in Tennessee. Yeah. I wait till I get home and I watch them with Mom. So it's just a sacrifice that you're going to have to make.
Well, actually what you said is it's a tradition that Mom and I watch the Hallmark Christmas movies when I come home for Thanksgiving, and you go to the bedroom and you watch football or sports.
And then you go take a nap and you watch whatever sport is on TV.
Yeah, so I've been watching all the sports activities since you came home on a little bitty 19-inch TV laying in my bed. That. So anyway.
It's not forever.
That's right. That's right. So you can always view our podcast each Wednesday night, 7 p.m. by subscribing to the podcast on your podcast app on your smart device. Or, of course, we are on Facebook Live, 7 p.m. we premiere. And then at the Rock Creek Church YouTube channel, you can see the Go the Distance podcast. So we had a great conversation last week, and we're going to continue the conversation this week, but we're going to take it in a different direction. And the title, as you guys saw when you came on this week's podcast, is Dear Teen. And so here's what I'm going to say. Just because you're not a teen does not mean this doesn't apply. This is going to apply even if you're not a teen, because we're going to actually talk about what you would go back and tell your teen self.
Yeah.
That's why it's called Dear Teen. But if you're raising a teenager, this podcast is going to be very helpful for you. It's going to be something that maybe you can use to share with your teen. If you are a teen, you may not be watching this because you may be at youth right now as this is airing, but you can go back and watch it. And I encourage you, parents, if you have a teenager, to ask your teenager or actually require your teenager to watch tonight's podcast. So let's talk about it. Dear teen, the idea is, what would Haley at 25 go back and tell Haley as a teenager?
Yeah. And I think this idea came from, I had gone away on a weekend trip with some really dear friends of mine, and I came home and I was reflecting on that weekend. And I just remember reflecting on all the good, and I remember thinking like, man, this is where I wanted to be. This is what I wanted to feel. These are the kind of people I wanted to have when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. And I remember writing a post on Instagram that went out on Instagram and Facebook, and moms flooded that Facebook post. And
not just your mom, but moms in general.
Moms of my teen girls in my ministry. And they were like, oh man, like that's so good. Like my daughter needs that, and we all need to hear that. And just this idea of, I wish I could go back and tell myself certain things that could have made my life easier. And like you said earlier, prefacing that this isn't just for teen girls and guys. This isn't just for those raising a teen. Like I would say this is for everybody, because I think we all have, as grown adults, we all have those lingering things that were said to us or done to us as teenagers that still affect us as adults, and that will creep in and that will become consuming thoughts. And it's almost like you beat yourself up because you're like, shouldn't I have been over this by now? Shouldn't I have grown out of this by now? But those little, the enemy likes to use the things from your past. Like, remember when you were rejected. Remember when you didn't measure up. Remember when, you were too much or whatever it is. There are things that I think a lot of people can resonate with tonight of just wherever you are. I think there's still aspects of our teenage selves in us that are crying out and being like, man, I went through a lot. And you look back on that and you're like, I wish I could go back and give that kid a hug.
Well, I think there are probably times in all of our lives that we wish we owned a DeLorean with a flux capacitor.
I don't know what you're talking. Is that Back to the Future?
Yeah, where you could get the thing up to 88 miles an hour and then go back and adjust or fix things that happened in your past. But the truth is, you can't go back.
Right.
You cannot go back and redo what happened. But what you can do is heal from what happened and build on that for the future. We're going to do a series in 2021, Pastor Greg and I are, called 88 miles an hour.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's going to be built around the fact of Back to the Future. I'm hoping, praying, and if any one of you want to help me, that's fine, that we can get a DeLorean in our lobby during that time.
That's cool.
Because there are actually DeLoreans out there that are built like the actual DeLorean in the Back to the Future movie. Yeah. Anyway, the gist of that series is going to be what does your future self need to know? If you could go into the future, not back to the future, but into the future and tell yourself things that you are going to need to know, what would those things be? And so I think this idea of going back in time, going back, and I wouldn't want to be a teenager ever again.
Absolutely not.
But but there are some things during those years I wish I could go back and talk to myself about. Yeah. And so I think that's what you're referring to.
Absolutely.
So let's get into it.
Yeah.
Tell me some things that you would tell the Haley of 15 years old.
Yeah. Well, the first one you're really going to like because it's something that you told me that has always stuck with me. And the first one is, it's never wrong to do the right thing. I don't remember how old I was when you told me that. And I don't know if that was something you made up or you heard it somewhere else. You can just say you made it up if you want.
Well,
Claim it.
I think it's like I heard someone say, I once heard it said, someone once said that someone said it, and then it's I said it. So I heard that somewhere down the line. It's never wrong to do the right thing, and I started teaching you and Ryder that when you were teenagers.
Yeah, and I think that really resonated with me then, and it still resonates with me now because every day we're faced with choices where you can do the right thing or you can do the wrong thing. And I think we can sometimes be so torn of like, well, what is the right option? Or in any crossroads in your life, like I have two choices. What do I do? And I always think like, okay, well, it's never wrong to do the right thing. Like there's always going to be a clear right thing to do. And I think back to the big season in my life, I think was high school softball. I think I was going through a lot. There were a lot of things that were happening. I was really devastated by some stuff and really just torn over some things that were happening. And I remember you telling me that it's never wrong to do the right thing. It's never wrong to respect authority. It's never wrong to stand up for what's right. And that really stuck with me. And I wish I could go back and really live by that more. I didn't make dumb choices as a teenager. Like I made stupid choices and I was a turd. I was a brat at times, but I didn't, make life-altering, devastating decisions. But there are those little things where, I could have done the right thing by standing up for a friend in the cafeteria. I could have done the right thing of, not laughing at a cruel joke said in the locker room about a girl. I could have done the right thing about, not bad-mouthing a teacher who maybe wasn't the most popular with. Right. And, there was those little things of, they're not life-altering, devastating, get you kicked out of school or get you shipped off to boarding school type things, but those little things of doing the right thing is never a wrong thing. So that really stuck to me, and I think as an adult too, for us today, we need to remember that, like in our workplaces, as we're with our families, when we're with our friends, it's never wrong to do the right thing, to call out the crude jokes, to call out the racism that's happening in the workplace. It's never wrong to stand up for your beliefs and call it black and white like it is, how Scripture says it is. It's never wrong to do the right thing, and in love, not in hate. But those little decisions each and every day make a big difference.
So we're in a season in our world and in our culture, and I know you see this, you experienced it, but you also are seeing it as you're working with teenage girls, is that we celebrate the wrong.
Yeah, it's almost like this. It's good to be bad kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's
and
cool to be bad.
we celebrate the bad, we celebrate the wrong, and we almost celebrate those who cheat the system or cut the corner.
They cut the corner to get ahead.
Yeah, and we celebrate that. And so many times the hard work, the behind the scenes work, the grind of every single day. And I'm talking about like even simple stuff like when you were in softball, run to the foul pole and back 4 times. That means go all the way to the stinking foul pole.
Right.
And I know that there were times when there were girls on your team that would go 3/4 of the way, and as soon as the coach turned their back, they would turn around and go back the other way, and you called them out on it. And that was not taken in a popular way because you were calling out less than what they had been asked to do. And that's where I told you it's never wrong to do the right thing. You do the right thing. No matter what everybody else around you is doing, no matter if they only run half of the way to the foul pole, you run all the way to the foul pole. And you touch the foul pole and you run to the next one and you go all the way because I was instilling in you a work ethic and an integrity that long after a softball field was gone, that when you would be on a church staff or work in the corporate world or whatever it was, people would know Haley Wilkerson will go all the way to the foul pole.
Right. And I mean, there may be girls on my high school softball team that watch this, I don't know, and they'll be the first to say I was not perfect. There were things that I did and said that were so out of line, and I look back and I'm like, I was just a punk thinking I was standing up and being a leader, but I was just being a bully. I think, I've grown tremendously since I was 16, 17 years old, and so saying these things now does not mean that I had this perfect at the time. Saying these things now, I tried to live by it, but I didn't always. I was the kid that cut corners too at times. But I think a thing to mention, running all the way to the foul pole, doing the right thing sometimes may mean you're last. Sometimes it may mean you run alone. Sometimes it may mean you walk alone. Because, if you're running, the whole entire way and then girls turn around 3/4 of the way, of course they're going to finish before you. Of course they're going to be with the pack. And it's going to be harder to notice that they did the wrong thing because they're together. But when you walk alone and you stand alone, it's much more obvious because you're the only one.
Yeah.
And that makes the target easier to hit. When you're the only one, you clearly know who your target is. When you're standing with the pack, it's easier to hide. It's easier to dodge the bullet. But when you are being a leader and you're standing up for what's right and you're doing the right thing, of course you're singled out, and you're gonna face fire for it, and it's gonna hurt. And that's what I did. I faced a lot of fire because I stood up for a coach that loved us and taught us well and did the right thing, but it wasn't popular in our situation.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I've been taught through, mentors in my life, is that leadership is 2 things. Leadership is influence. And so we're all leaders because we're all influencing someone. So if someone says, "Oh, I'm not a leader, I'm a follower," well, you are always influencing someone. So you're always leading. And the second thing I've been taught is leaders go first. Leadership is about the person who's willing to go first. The problem with going first is there's a big bullseye on your back for everybody that's behind you that's following you. And so leadership, while it's a wonderful thing, and while it's very fulfilling for people that are called to lead, the fact of the matter is leadership is lonely. Because not only is it lonely because you're in front, but because a lot of people behind you are taking pot shots at you. I've always found that the people who boo the referees usually boo from the cheapest seats in the stadium, the furthest away from the field. The people that are on the field, they're in the action, they see it. And so I've just had to learn that don't listen to the boos from the cheap seats. You have one person in regards to ministry and in regards to our walk with God. You have one person only to please, and it's not me, and it's not you. It's your Heavenly Father. That's the one person you're performing for. And so you have to understand, I'm giving my best for God, and I'm doing my best for Him, and it's never wrong to do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It may not be the popular thing, but it's the right thing, and I'm going to do the right thing because somewhere down the line, doing the right thing is going to be rewarded.
Right.
So
I think that's good.
So you would have told yourself It's never wrong to do the right thing. And I thank you for bringing that up, because that is something that I shared with you probably in a moment when you were upset because
Tears probably streaming down my face.
you weren't popular at the time. Somebody didn't like you at the time. You were being shunned, or you're being criticized because you chose to do the right thing.
Right. And again, prefacing, I didn't always do the right thing. I just want that
No.
to be clear. Like, because I don't.
Yeah, none of us do.
Yeah. My biggest fear with this, if we're just being honest and transparent, is my biggest fear is people from my past watching this and laughing at me like, are you kidding me? She was a jerk. Are you kidding me? And, she was such and such. And I mean, those are true. I mean, I was not perfect. I was the mean girl at times.
Yeah.
I was a loud mouth. I was quick to speak. There were plenty of Twitter wars that I was in the middle of class when I was supposed to be learning, but Twitter in high school can be dangerous.
You came about that easily. You got that from me.
Yeah, the aggressiveness and the assertiveness, and I was not one to be walked over. I was very defensive, and I came to the defense of those that I cared for and loved, like a coach that was dear to me. And so my biggest fear is I don't want people to think that I'm talking from a perspective of I did all these things perfectly or I was the perfect kid. Yeah. I want that to be very clear of I was very much far from the perfect kid, but I have made leaps and bounds of growth. Praise God.
God's still working on all of us.
Yeah.
We're not the woman or the man we want to be, but we're not the woman or the man we used to be. And so I have a word for you and all those that might be watching that know times that you didn't hit the mark. The word is grace. It's the same thing that God gives you through his son, Jesus Christ. Yeah. None of us are perfect, but we have had experiences in our lives, in our past, in our teenage years, our college years, our adult years, our parenting years, our empty nester years, where we've had to have grace extended to us, and we've had to extend it to others. So if someone's watching this and they can't give you grace in those moments, then they need to go back and check their own life, because Jesus says that we forgive like we've been forgiven, and we extend grace as grace has been. Here's how I'd say it. Give people the same grace you want people to give you when you mess up.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So, all right, next one. This one's a good one. This is one I'm still learning. It says, stop trying so hard to be accepted by people who really don't care about you. I know you want them to like you, but trust me, it feels so much better to be a part of a group of friends who genuinely love and care for you instead of just tolerate you.
That's good.
Thank you.
That's so good. Why is it that we try so hard to make people like us that will never, ever like us?
Yeah. And you'll break your back for people who won't even take a bullet for you.
Yeah, there's an old saying that I've swam across oceans for people that would never walk across a mud puddle for me.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. You can spend your whole life chasing people who aren't happy with you or are never, you're never going to fit into their crowd. You can spend your entire life focused on that, chasing them, or you can spend your entire life focusing and chasing on those who want to go forward with you.
Yeah.
And being in ministry, both of us, you being in student ministry, me being a senior pastor, I mean, let's face it, we've had to make decisions. We've had to make calls. We've had to do things where it didn't please everybody. And again, that's leadership. And I know this, I can't believe I'm saying this because I know you probably don't believe this is true, but sometimes people who are followers of Christ can be cruel. And they can say things and do things. It's like...
Oh, I'm well aware. There were some evals when I was a camp director where I was like, a youth pastor wrote this?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Like, you brought kids here to camp and you just wrote the cruelest evaluation ever.
Yeah. So I don't have to worry about the outside world being my enemy because God has given me enough people around me that are in the Christian faith that have been... I mean... Listen, I was a worship pastor for 15 years, and I fought the worship wars of transitioning music in churches, and I've gotten the anonymous offering or letters in the offering boxes, and I've gotten the hate emails and stuff, and I've gotten them since we started Rock Creek many years ago. And so, and here's what's crazy. You can get 100 emails that are positive, and one email that's negative just negates them all.
Yeah.
And so why is that? It's because we tend to focus on the negative versus the positive. And I want to tell you where this goes back to. It goes back to self-esteem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're bothered by one bit of criticism, one somebody being critical or saying something, even if it could be true, and most time it's not. Mm-hmm. And we lose sight of the 100 that are saying, let's go. Mm-hmm. And it's that Nehemiah principle. When Nehemiah's naysayers, Sanballat and his buddies, mm-hmm. when they came and they were criticizing Nehemiah, he had a decision: either stay on the wall and build the wall, or come down and get in the fray of the criticism. He stayed on the wall. Mm-hmm. He kept building the wall, even in the face of criticism. And he didn't worry about those who wanted to be critical. He worried about the city of all the people that he wanted to protect by rebuilding the wall. And so that's a great point. And I think specifically for you and for teenage girls, and I see it with boys too, somehow, some way, somebody gets elevated mm-hmm. in the group.
There's always going to be the one that, I called it the glue. Like every friend group that I've seen me a part of in the past, there's always that one person that kind of brings everyone together. And I feel like they're the one that kind of leads. They're the one that's elevated. They're mm-hmm. the one that everyone is drawn to. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And everybody wants to be around that person mm-hmm. or that group. And at the end of the day, especially if you're raising teenagers or you are a teenager, at the end of the day, chances are that person that's the glue, or that group's the glue that everybody wants to be around or be a part of in school, when you're 25, you're not even going to be around that group or see that group.
Yeah.
You
won't even probably remember their name.
Right. Life is, because God's going to take you places that are greater than the group in the cafeteria.
Yeah. And I mean, when I typed this out, when I got back from that trip and I was reflecting and I typed this out, I could picture my lunchroom as I could picture Pilot Point Middle School. Mm-hmm. I could picture the tables. I could picture who sat at each table. And I remember every single girl's name at the table that I was dying to be at. But they're the same group of girls that told me, I have to go home today and burn my Hollister shirt because you have the same one as I do. I can't wear it because you have the same one. I have to go home and burn this. And those were the girls that I wanted to sit with. Those were the girls that I was dying and would have done anything for, to be just at their table and to be one of them and to be accepted. All the while, and you know exactly who this other group of girls are, all the while just across the lunchroom, there's a group of girls who were the sweetest girls that I cried because I missed opportunities. I missed, those girls were some of the kindest, most loving girls that just wanted to be your friend. And we played sports together. Mm-hmm. We grew up in church together. Mm-hmm. And I didn't give them the time of day because they weren't those other girls. Mm-hmm. But I look back and those are the girls that supported me and cared for me and didn't care what I wore, didn't care what cars our parents drove, didn't care what housing subdivision we lived in, because they had their own problems. Mm-hmm. Mothers with cancer, mm-hmm. siblings who were off the rails. Like mm-hmm. these were girls that had their own problems and they didn't care about those things and the shallow surface level things. They just wanted to love you and be your friend. And yeah, that's my biggest regret. Yeah. Seventh grade Haley, she could go back.
Yeah.
Be like, why did I care so much?
well, I was about to kill seventh grade Haley. Your mom and I were really struggling with you because we couldn't get that through to you. Mm-hmm. You were so focused on
chasing.
Yeah, you were chasing that group. Mm-hmm. And now you don't even have anything to do with that group.
I've not talked to a single one of them since we moved to Prosper as an eighth grade.
Yeah.
As an eighth grader, I didn't talk to a single one of them. Yeah.
But I guarantee you that if a couple of those girls I know you're talking to that were at the other table, mm-hmm. if they walked up to you today, it mm-hmm. would be like,
we haven't even missed a beat.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's, and those girls, they'll probably turn out to be great girls.
Absolutely. They turned out to have great careers and they're making impacts.
Sure.
And they have great friendships of
it's
their
just
own.
Teenagers being teenagers. But it's seventh graders being seventh graders. But that's what we're trying to say to you tonight. Mm-hmm. Especially if you're a teenage girl or boy watching this. Listen, mm-hmm. the only group you need to be a part of is the Kingdom of God group.
Right.
To really matter, you matter to God. And I know we all want to fit in. Mm-hmm. We all want to be liked. We all want to be a part of a group.
We all want to belong.
We do. But you do belong. You are enough. Mm-hmm. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. You have value. You know how you know you have value? Because what was paid for you was the mm-hmm. blood of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So there's value in all of us, no matter where we shop.
And when we get to the gates of heaven, he's not going to ask us what lunch table we sat at and what group we hung out with on the weekends. He's going to see the heart, and he's going to see that decision you made for the Lord and how you lived your life for the Lord. And it's just, when I look back, I'm like, that was the world to me. And that was so important to me, was who my people were. And, 10, 15 years down the road, that doesn't matter a single bit to me, who I sat with and at the 7th and 8th grade lunch table. Yeah. That means nothing. Yeah. But at the time, when you are a 12 and 13-year-old girl, it means everything. And like when I even see it now when I go, before COVID, when we would go into cafeterias at our schools in Tennessee, we would go into cafeterias and you could feel the lunchroom tension. You could feel the drama of the tables of, oh, well, this girl normally sits at this table, but she's at that table today. Something happened. And you can feel like you would hear the buzz. And like, it's just, to them, it is everything, who you belong to. But at the end of the day, you only belong to Christ.
Yes. So I want to encourage you in this before you go to your third one. You would go back and change that.
Oh, absolutely. I would go back for sure.
But let me just say, what you can't go back and fix, God is using now because you now know. Yeah. And you can see through it. And you can speak right into the heart of the one girl that's hurting and the girl that's hurting every other girl. You can speak right into them because you know both sides of it.
I've been both.
Yeah. So that's one of the beauties of being 25 now. It's also the beauty of being 50. I know things at 50 I didn't know at 25.
Right.
And while I can't go back and redo 25, I can now be better at 50 because of 25. And so that's what I'm trying to say to you. So be encouraged that God's using all of that you experienced now to minister in the lives of girls.
Yeah. No moment is wasted.
God wastes nothing.
Yeah. And I think my third one kind of ties into the previous one, but it says, don't write someone off just because they might be a little different than you or because you've heard certain things about them. Give them a chance and form your own opinion of them. Most of those times, those tend to be the best friendships. Yeah. And I think that very much ties into the previous one of maybe I didn't want to sit with a certain group of girls, even though they were the nice girls and they were the caring and loving girls, but maybe I didn't want to sit with them because they had a certain reputation of being weird or being quirky, or they weren't the popular kids or whatever it may have been, or I didn't even give this certain person the time of day because I'd heard, crazy things about them. And I didn't even give them the chance for me to make my own opinion of them, for them to prove that reputation wrong or right. Right. And I think that's important for all teenagers, guys and girls, to realize is that everybody will always have a perception about them. There will always be a reputation that precedes them. Right. You have to make the choice of if you're going to believe it or not, and if you're going to let them prove that to be wrong or right to you. And I think it's important that, and I mean, even as adults now, it's important that we give people a chance, because I think society in the world today, we are quick to write people off based on what we see with their social media, what we hear through the grapevine, what we see them struggling with. But everybody has their own story. Everyone has their own struggles, their own battles that they're fighting. And we need to be people of grace, like you talked about, to allow people to kind of bare their souls to you, let them be their true self. And then you can go from there and decide what you're going to think.
Hey, thanks everybody for joining us for part one of my conversation here with Haley about the dear teen, the things she would go back and tell herself if she could go back and talk to herself as a teenager. It's been great having you. And as this conversation continues to be real and raw, we hope that you'll join us again next week for part two of this conversation. God bless.